What's up, everybody? We're back with another video talking about what might be the last seemingly easy week in the NFL season. We're talking Survivor Picks Week 12. Let's get started. At first, we'll take a look at the 9 teams here, the 9 top teams I think you'll be considering this week. And you'll notice really early on, there's a lot of these games that are favored by more than the 3.5 points that we're used to, and you got a lot of usual suspects here with the Chiefs, Dolphins, Cowboys, Bills near the top, and then some teams that are a little less frequent on this board with the Jets and the Seahawks. And then, as always, don't forget, especially if you're in a really tight competitive Survivor League with a lot of people left, you're probably going to want to be thinking about strategy and saving teams throughout the rest of the season. So you're definitely going to want to consult each team's remaining schedule. But we'll start off this video talking about the game that is the one divisional matchup on my slate here, and that's the Cowboys hosting the Giants. As always, the Cowboys will be playing on Thursday on Thanksgiving, tradition that's been going on for many years. But despite the Giants being, a team that I don't think is as good as their record shows, and a Cowboys team that I think is better than their record shows, is still a game that you want to be concerned about. It's just, these teams are obviously so familiar with each other, played each other many times on Thanksgiving and outside of that as well. And it just seems like these games can be a lot closer than they seem sometimes, just because of the pure fact that they're divisional rivals. And that's just how the NFL works. I talk about it week in and week out. It's always something that I'm concerned about. I think that given the circumstances and how much better I think this Cowboys team is than the Giants, you don't have to worry that much. But this Giants team has proven more games than not this season that, they can stick around in close games. And a lot of the games the Giants have been playing in and winning in have been one-score games. So this is something that I think I don't necessarily hate the Cowboys to win this game, but I really don't like the -9 they're giving the Giants here. I think the Giants, just being a divisional rival in a close game, in theory, in my mind, makes this game a perceived with caution, something that you can consider. And I think you'll see a lot better options with the Cowboys even throughout the rest of the season, albeit being very short rest of the season. Another game I'm talking about, Packers and the Eagles here. The Eagles definitely have not looked as good as they start out the season. Obviously, they dropped their one loss against the Commanders on Monday Night Football, and then they, looked a little bit scary against the Colts, and they barely pulled that one out at the end. This is a Packers team with Aaron Rodgers that, one, is getting a little bit better week in and week out as receivers like Christian Watson get more integrated and comfortable within that offense. And this is a Packers team that as the season gets on, gets more and more desperate for a win as they're angling for a playoff spot. I don't necessarily think that the Packers match up that great against the Eagles. I think the Eagles will do a really good job of not only containing the Packers' run game, which is what their offense is so desperately predicated on, but also the Eagles with their pass rush will have a good time getting after Aaron Rodgers in that weaker right side of that Packers line. And then the other side of the football, the Eagles have a very good offensive line that will be able to do their best to limit this Packers rush defense that is one of the best in the league. Eagles are going to want to run the ball, and that's the weakness against this Packers defense here. I think they match up well, and everything I'm saying is for the Eagles. But at the end of the day, when you're playing an Aaron Rodgers led team that is on the wrong side of the record book right now and looking for a win, it's always something to be concerned about. And I just don't think the Eagles are trending in the right direction right now. Not a great pick. So it seems like teams are starting to figure them out a little bit. I'm not saying they're still a very good team, but they definitely don't have the offensive pop that they used to at the start of the season. And then another perceived caution game, the Ravens here on the road, their offense just has not been looking as good lately, as evident against the Panthers, who do have a good defense, but the Ravens really struggled to score against them. I think they might have a similarly tough time against the Jaguars defense that isn't all that bad either. I think the Ravens' real issue here with their team is they're so one-dimensional on offense. They're really run heavy. They don't have great receivers to throw the ball to. They don't have a stellar passer in Lamar Jackson to, put the ball in really tight gaps for the receivers, kind of like what Aaron Rodgers does when he doesn't have that good of receivers, or Aaron Rodgers did. He's not really doing it right now. Well, for the Ravens in this offense, it's really just Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson right now, and that is just not enough for them to put up a lot of points. The Jaguars aren't a terrible team. They've had sparks of decency and competency, but, haven't really been able to put it together in totality. I just don't like the Ravens on a spot here where their offense has been very lackluster on the road against the Jaguars team coming off a bye of all things. So definitely a scary spot for the Ravens here. And the last one to keep caution with is the Seahawks at home against the Raiders. Even though the Seahawks are coming off a bye, this one's concerning me because I just wouldn't expect it to be only a 3.5-point spread. At least the eyeball test tells me that the Seahawks team is more than, even, let's say, with the Raiders, because them being the home team, being given 3 points here, the spread's implying the Seahawks and Raiders are basically dead even as teams. And that's just not the way I perceive it when I watch these two teams play. So just that disconnect with me in the Vegas line is already telling me you should be careful picking this game. But that's really the main reason. The Raiders looked, I guess, decent. They have flashes of competency when Derek Carr and Adams can connect, but it's really outside of that duo and outside of Josh Jacobs, that offense really hasn't been clicking. Whereas the Seahawks, Geno Smith has been dominating with that offense, looking really good as a passer, throwing to all kinds of guys. And then obviously Metcalf and Lockett are helping them out a lot. But then Kenneth Walker in the backfield too, making that Seahawks offense look really dangerous and really highly rated. So that's why I like the Seahawks here. I would just have guessed by how good the Seahawks offense have looked and coming off a bye week that they would be favored by more than 3.5 points versus the Raiders. The fact that they aren't tells me that the Seahawks probably aren't as good as the eyeball test says, and something that you should be aware about when trying to pick them. Talking about the best pick this week, I think it's pretty clear, just one by the spread and just by the eyeball test of the Chiefs, that it's Kansas City. They're the best pick. No matter what's going on, you can always trust Patrick Mahomes with the ball in his hands to deliver in the fourth quarter, deliver in the 2-minute drill. It is just mind-blowing and so impressive how consistent he is in clutch that he's been throughout his career. Then the Rams, who have looked totally lackluster. Obviously, without Cooper Kupp now, who's been a huge part of that offense, it just seems like all signs point to Kansas City at home, steamrolling the Rams. Last time these two teams played, it might have been the greatest game I've ever seen. I don't think it's going to be that way this time. I think the Chiefs steamroll the Rams early and often here in a very non-competitive football game. The best value this week here is the Jets at home versus the Bears. The Jets boasting, one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the league. They only let up 3 points offensively to the Patriots and somehow still lost. That's because, the Patriots are no slouches on defense themselves and gave Zach Wilson and this Jets offense a really hard time. But they're playing a Bears team that is the exact opposite. They are one of, if not the worst defenses in the league. While Justin Fields is looking very competent and explosive and must-watch TV, when you have two teams going up against each other, whether one has a good offense and a bad defense, and the other team has a bad offense and a good defense, usually the team with the better defense wins. And so I like the Jets here. It's -5. They're giving the Jets a lot of respect here, especially on the defense side of the football, like I mentioned. I really don't see the Bears putting up that many points. Fields will have his thing where he scrambles and finds an open receiver to get some, chunk yardage plays and maybe even some free points there. But this Jets defense has been very disciplined and very tough. I suspect the Bears have a really tough time against them. And Zach Wilson and this Jets offense to get going a little bit against a very lax Bears defense, I think it's a great spot to pick the Jets. As you can see here, you're really not going to want to pick them against too many people. You're not going to want to pick them against Minnesota or Buffalo, not Seattle or Miami. Those are all playoff teams. Detroit at home, likely a good spot. Talk about another team with good offense, bad defense. Jacksonville, you could argue, but right now, let's stay away from that. Another team that I could think of for like a really good value pick might be the Seattle team. But for those reasons I mentioned, I think it's that Seattle game is something that you should proceed with caution. But at the same time, it is good value. Like I just showed in that graphic up there, you're only picking the Seahawks one of these times. This is just not as good of a value because of those inherent risk factors I mentioned before. Definitely something you can consider picking, especially if you're trying to play the strategy game here. But just, this is basically a coin flip game is what Vegas is saying. So just know that if you're picking it, that you got a 50-50 shot at that one. But I do like the edge in the Seahawks here with a better offense coming off a bye. Talking about the other games we haven't mentioned, you got the Dolphins here coming off a bye against a horrible Texans team. Tua is looking much better as he's healthy. And this offense, especially with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, looks pretty unstoppable. And add on to the factor that this Dolphins front seven's playing pretty good defense. Guys like Melvin Ingram are able to get a pass rush. They still have a couple skilled cornerbacks back there in the secondary. This shouldn't be too much. This is basically a no-brainer here with the Dolphins. If you got them, it's a good time to pick them because I'd be shocked if they lost this one. Same thing with the Bills. Even though they're on the road playing the Thanksgiving football team Lions, I'm not too concerned about this one because of the fact the Lions have such a poor defense and how the Bills' defense is pretty strong. Now, they haven't looked like it in the past couple of weeks, especially against the Vikings, but I think they have a lot of talent here, and I think it's the kind of defense, the kind of schemes that are going to give this Lions team a lot of trouble here. The one thing is always to be concerned about and to watch is Josh Allen and his elbow that's been concerning him. You can definitely see it's affecting him. He's not running the ball as much. He's not being as physical as a passer and a runner here because he's hobbling and nursing that injury. So it definitely takes an element of explosiveness out of this offense. That being said, you can tell them against the Browns, who have a much better defense than the Lions, that isn't the biggest concern or nothing that will derail their game. And, the Bills are still going to be the Bills, put up a good amount of points and play tough defense. That's the kind of recipe that the Lions do not want to go up against. And I think the Bills win this one easy on Thanksgiving Day. And then finally, we have the Niners hosting the Saints here. I like the Niners just about over most football teams because of the way they run the football. They don't need Jimmy G to make highlight plays. They get the ball to their key players like McCaffrey now, Debo, George Kittle, play very solid defense, and that's their winning recipe. And I think that's a good recipe to beat the Saints here this week, especially as they struggle themselves on offense. Quarterbacks like Andy Dalton, who sometimes need to do too much to win games. So I think it's a really good spot for the Niners. I don't love the 8-point spread here because I do think the Saints have flashes of, good offense coupled with good defense here, especially when they can get Kamara going as they did last Sunday against the Rams. So that's always something they're concerned, but this Niners defense is so strong and well-balanced that I don't think it's that scary. So I think Niners are a good pick here as well. But that's the video. Again, Chiefs, great pick, but they've been great picks all season long. Really good value here with the Jets, I believe, against the Bears. When you have a team as mismatched as the Jets do defensively against the Bears, I think they're going to control the time of possession in this game heavily, and that'll be enough to put up enough points to beat this young, inexperienced Bears team. And then again, Seahawks, that definitely a game that you should be concerned about. That spread is a little surprising to me, but if you are feeling risky, I think it's a good value there too. But good luck in week 12 and hopefully make tangible steps to winning your Survivor League and getting one step closer to that trophy.